In this video, I'll briefly be going over the models that we'll be using and the API. So you want to go to openai.com, go to Developers and Documentation, and you want to go first to Models here. The models that we will be using are GPT-4, 3.5, and 3. We'll also be using DallE and Whisper in the next two projects to generate images and convert audio to text. GPT-4 is used in ChatGPT, which you might be familiar with. Let me log in. ChatGPT uses the Chat API, and so this is trained to be a chat bot. It's trained to take your request and respond, and then remember that request and response, and continue to respond based on the data that you give it. So I mentioned the Chat API. So here, if we go to GPT, you can see that we have the Chat Completion API. That's what ChatGPT runs on. And this can only be used with GPT-4 and GPT 3.5. And as I said, this is trained to act as a chatbot. So you can see here the Python implementation would look like this, where you have the chat completion endpoint, the model, and then you can tell the system to act as a helpful assistant, although it already pretty much does that. And then you can see here an input of a prompt, who won the World Series in 2020, and you can see the response. And then you can see that this question lacks the context of this one. However, it will remember the context from previous questions and responses, and it'll answer the question accordingly because it's trained as a chatbot. This is different from the normal completions API. The completions API cannot be run with GPT 3.5 or GPT-4. It can only be run with GPT-3. And you can see the Python implementation here. You can see it's just completion. You can see the model is TextEventy003, which is run with GPT-3. And then you can see the prompt here. So the completions API can only take in single turn responses, whereas Chat API can take in multiple turn responses. And that's why this one does not act as a chatbot. The reason that we need both is because the completions API is the only one that we can fine-tune for our purposes. So we can fine-tune the completions API to act as a customer service chatbot, as a personal assistant chatbot, and we will be doing that later on, but we are not able to do that with the Chat API.